and welcome. This is going to be lesson 1.1. It's in a chapter called Patterns in Relations. And the objectives of this lesson are that you have to be able to tell me whether a number is divisible by 2, 4, 5, 8, or 10 without actually dividing it. So I don't want you to tell me that 10 divided by 2 is 5. I want you to tell me, can 2 divide into 10 evenly without anything left over? Okay? Now, you're going to be asked on your first quiz, what are these rules? And you're going to have to write them down. So you have to memorize them. You are not going to be able to use your calculator for this quiz because I want you to use the rules that you've actually created or that we've actually come up with. So why do we do this? Well, in the future you're going to start taking things called fractions. One of the key things you need to reduce a fraction is to tell whether the top number and the bottom number can be divided by one single number. Now, I know it sounds maybe a little bit complicated, but we'll get to that later. But there is a reason for this. So let's start with a divisibility rule for 2. If you take and make a list of the numbers which are in the 2 times tables, we call these multiples, or skip counting by 2s. What I want you to do is I want you to make a list of the numbers counting by 2. So you should write down 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and it just keeps going on and on and on, and it never stops. 3 dots usually means it continues forever. Now, to continue with this part of the lesson, it says, what do you notice about these numbers? Well, you should see some patterns coming clear. First off, you should notice that in this case right here, you have a 2. Here you have a 2. Here you have a 2. Here you have a 4, and a 4. A 6, a 6, and there would have been a 6 here, an 8, and an 8, and a 0, and a 0. And since these are all divisible by 2, we can take and sum all that up and say that this list of numbers ends in 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. And we call these the even numbers. Now, a second way of looking at this would be to say that every one of those numbers in that line, 2, 4, 6, 8, can be divided in half. And you can make 2 groups and you'll have nothing left over. So for example, you can take 2 and split them up, then you'll have 1 in each group. You can take 4, split them up, and you'll have 2 in each group. Okay, but in both cases, there is nothing left over. So how do we use this to tell if a number is divisible by 2? Well, it's really simple. All we do is look at the last number. So, and we don't use the word number, I'm going to use the word digit. If it is even, now what does even mean? That means it ends in 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. If it is even, or ends in those numbers, the whole number is also divisible by 2. So let's take a look at some questions here. Take a look at the first one, A, 3. Now, is 3 ending in a 0, 2, 4, 6, or an 8? No, it isn't. Can you take a 3 and 3 items, like 3 pencils, and divide them up without breaking the pencils and have equal on each side? No, you can't. You're always going to have 1 left over. So this one is a no. 36 ends in a 6. That's in our list, so that's a yes. 75 ends in a 5. That's not in our list, so that's a no. Ends in a 1, so that's a no. Ends in a 3, and that's a no. And ends in a 4, so that's a yes. So that is the rule for the divisibility by 2. So to sum it up, to tell if a number is divisible by 2 evenly, that number must end in a 0, 2, 4, 6, or an 8. If it does, it's divisible evenly by 2. Now that was the first rule. Now the second rule is a little bit more complicated. It's called the divisibility rule for 4. Now, the divisibility rule for 4, to do it, you have to look at not the last digit, but the last 2 digits. Okay? So I've got two numbers here, 224 and 234,435. What we're going to do is we're going to check to see whether the last 2 digits, right here and right here, are divisible evenly by 4. That means, are they in the 4 times tables? Well, 24 is actually 6 times 4. So since 24 is in the 4 times tables, we know that 224 is divisible by 4. Taking a look at 35. Does 4 go into 35 evenly? Well, you have to check your times tables. 4 times 5 is 40, 4 times 6 is 24, 4 times 7 is 28, 4 times 8 is 32, 4 times 9 is 36. Oh, so 35 is between 32 and 36, so this one is a no. Now, what do you notice about these last 2 digits? Well, these 2 digits are within your normal 4 times tables. Now that means that we are only going from 0 to 40. That's not always going to be the case. So they are small numbers. Okay, so when we have the smaller numbers, the divisibility rule is really just check the last 2 numbers to see if they're in the 4 times tables. In the 4 times tables. Now you know why I gave you all of that work in grade 4 on your times tables. This is where it's going to pay off. Now, you'll notice the next 2 examples, they end in numbers which are not in your normal times tables for 4. The first one ends in 62. The next one ends in 98. Now, these 2 numbers, you can't check our normal 4 times table information in our heads. It's too big. But what I can do is I can subtract either 40 or 80 from these numbers and then check what the remaining number is. So for example, if I take 62 and I subtract 40, I'm going to have 22 left over. Now, is 22 in the 4 times tables? No, it is not. So 452,562 is not divisible by 4 evenly. All right, let's check the next one. Well, I can't subtract 40 because that's really not going to help me, but I can subtract 2 40s, and that's 80, right? 40 plus 40 is 80. So if I take away an 80, 8 take away 0 is 8, 9 take away 8 is 1, so checking 18, is 18 in the 4 times tables? The answer to that is no. 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 5 is 20, so this one is a no. All right? Now, there's one other corollary we're going to get to in a minute, and we're not going to do it first. I want you to try these 2 examples, and then I'll come back to the last part of this rule. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to finish off these. Just pause the recording, and when you're ready, start it up again. Okay, you should have these done now. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to check 56. So 56, take away 40, gives me 16. This is 4 times 4. So the answer to the question is 1,256,256. Is that divisible by 4 evenly? The answer to that is yes. The answer, why? Because 56 is divisible by 4 evenly. Now let's check the next one. 2,526,259. So is 59, not 259, just 59, is 59 divisible by 4 evenly? Answer that. Hang on, now move over for me, be nice. Let's find out. So 59, take away 40, leaves me with 9 take away 0 is 9, 5 take away 4 is 1, 19. Is 19 in the 4 times tables? The answer to that is no. So 2,526,259 is not divisible evenly by 4. Now, remember I told you there's what's called an exception? Let's take a look at that. What happens if, just on this page, the number ends in 0, 0? Can you divide 0, 0 by 4? Well, the answer to that is no. Okay? It's 0. It doesn't work. So what we can do here is take an example, and I'll show you and prove to you that this is actually going to work. First off, I'm going to take 100 pennies. Now, 100 ends in 2 zeros, right? So we would be normally checking 0, 0. Is 0, 0 divisible evenly by 4? That's the question we would normally ask, and that's hard to actually visualize. But if you take a look at 100 and think of it as being pennies or a dollar, you can make 4 quarters from this. You can divide by 4, and you'll get 25, 25, 25, and 25. So, is 100 divisible by 4 evenly? The answer is yes. So, we can add this part to our lesson. And we're going to, to our definition, and we're going to do that in the next page. I want you to do the next 3 examples. And when you're ready, I want you to you press pause, and then when you're ready, I want you to start the recording up again, and we will correct them. Okay, now that you're done, let's start with the first one, 25,294. Start with 94. Well, 94 is too much on our times tables, too high, so I'm going to take away 80 from it. That's going to give me 14. Is 14 in the 4 times tables? The answer to that is no. So this one is a no. Let's check the next one. 96. Take 80 away. That gives me 16. Is 16 in the 4 times tables? The answer to that is yes. So, in these 2 cases, the first one, because 14 was not divisible by 4 evenly, was not in the 4 times tables, 25,294 is not divisible by 4 evenly. The second one, 696, since 96 is divisible by 4 evenly, that means that 696 is also divisible by 4 evenly. Now, we just did this one. This one ends in 2 zeros. If a number ends in 2 zeros, it is always divisible by 4. So this one is yes. And the reason for that is it ends in 2 zeros. All right. If you have any trouble with these first 2 rules, pause, go back, listen to it again. All right, let's go on to the next rule. Now, the divisibility rule for 5 is actually one of the easier ones. If you take a look at the numbers that are in the 5 times tables, or if you skip count by 5s, you're going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, and so on. Now, you should notice that the last digits, what do you notice about these last digits? Well, they are either a 0 or a 5. So your rule for the divisibility rule for 5 is they have to end with a 0 or 5. Great writing there. Now these next 3 examples are very easy. I want you to do them, pause the recording, and we'll correct them in a second. Okay, you should be done by now. The first one ends in a 5, so this is a yes. Our decision, our reason. 84,909 ends in a 9. The answer to that, no. And really, all you have to put in is does not end in 5 or 0. Looks like 6, 0. Okay, the last one, 0, 0. So, ends in a 0, so the answer here is yes, ends in 0. In all three cases, you notice that I put down a yes or a no to answer the question, and I gave how I knew or my reason. All right, now the next one. This is one where we're going to depart from the textbook a little bit. The textbook wants you to do long division with numbers which are 3 digits. And I think in this case that it's not going to be healthy for us to do it. So what we're going to allow you to do on the divisibility rule for 8 is you have to tell me the rule, but you're allowed to use your calculator to figure it out. So taking a look at the divisibility rule, I'll tell you what it is. You look at the last 3 digits. If they are divisible evenly by 8, then the whole number is. Now, to find out whether 394 is divisible by 8 is a pain. So we're going to do it with our calculators. So you're going to be allowed to bring a calculator out. I'll grab mine, and you can see right here. I need to take a look and check 21,394. I don't have to worry about the 21. I just have to check 394. So 394 divided by 8. If this comes out to be an even number, that would mean that the number is divisible by 8. If it comes out and it's not an even, not a whole number, I meant to say whole number. If it's not a whole number, then it is not divisible. So let's take a look at what the answer is. It is a 49.25. This has a decimal. So this is saying that 8 will go into this number 49 times and 0.25 more times. So this one here is a no. It does not divide evenly. So no, 394 is not divisible by 8. All right. There's my answer, no. And there's my reason. 394 is not divisible by 8. Going to the next one, I've got, take a look at, I'm just going to skip right down to the next one, 1 million. We're not going to worry about this right here. We're going to go right to our calculator method. So you've got 1,236,958. What you have to do is check that number. 958. Is it divisible by 8 evenly or not? So get out your trusty calculator and take and do the calculations. 958 divided by 8 equals, look at that, 119.75. It has a decimal. It does not go in evenly. Because of that, that means that 1,236,958 is not divisible. So 958 is not divisible by 8. So your answer is no. Well, let's check the next one, 2,569. So taking your calculator out, 2,569 divided by 8 is equal to 321.125. It's not a whole number, so the answer is no. So this one is no. The reason is because 569 is not divisible by 8. All right. The next one, I want you to try these next 4. All right. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. Work on your calculator, give me the answer, write down yes or no with the reason. It's a 2-part answer worth 2 marks. Pause the recording and then let me know what your answers are just by starting up and we'll correct them. Okay. Now let's take a look at 865,596. We have to look at the last 2 digits. 596. Get your calculator out and take a look at this number and find out whether it divides evenly. 596 divided by 8 is 0.5. It has a decimal, so the answer is no. And why? 596 is not divisible by 8. Okay, let's check the next one. Zeros. Remember back when we were doing the divisibility rule for 4, and you had to check the last digit, sorry, the last 2 digits, and if it was divisible by, it had 2 zeros, and it was. And this time, guess what happens when there's 3 digits? The answer to that is automatically a yes. Okay, so since it has 3 zeros on its end, the answer to that is yes, it's divisible by 8 evenly. Okay, and here's a couple more. We're taking with 265, so grab your calculator. 265 divided by 8. Does it have a decimal? Yeah, so the answer here is no. And the reason is because 265 is not divisible by 8 evenly. All right. Oops. Put that back. Got my calculator, move it down. Now I got to check 251. So on my calculator, 251, divide that by 8. It comes out to be, oh, look, there's a big decimal there. So the answer to this one is also no. So this one is no. And the reason is because 251 is not divisible by 8. Now, you're only allowed to use your calculator for the 8. You cannot use your calculator for 2, 4, 5, or any of the other ones. Only for the 8. Okay, let's go on to these 2 examples. I want you to try them. Use your calculator to find out, and then restart the program or the recording when you're ready. Okay, you should be ready to go. The rule is look at the last 3 digits. I think I said 2 digits in the last example, but it means the last 3. Use your calculator and give it a check. So we've got 235 divided by 8. Is that an even number, or a whole number? The answer to that is no. So this is no, and the reason is because 235 is not divisible by 8 evenly. Now the next one, 584. Again, 584 divided by 8. The answer is 73. This one is a whole number. So that means that this one is also divisible by 8. So the answer for this one is yes. And the reason? Because 584 is divisible by 8 evenly. All right. That takes care of the 8 one, the divisibility rule for 8. Now let's move on to what I think is probably one of the easier ones. The divisibility rule for 10. Well, I want you to take and write down the first 5 multiples of 10. What do you notice? They all end in 0. So, what do you think the divisibility rule is for 10? If a number ends in a 0, it's divisible by 10. Okay, 3 quick questions. You should be able to do them as quick as I can. 230. Does it end in a 0? The answer here is yes. So it ends in 0. 0, Z-E-R-O. So the answer to that one is yes. Does not end in a 0. So no. And this one is a yes. And the reason, because it ends in 0. All right. that takes care of the multiple, or the divisibility rule for 10. So let's take and do a little bit of an application with one. What I'm going to do now is set up a Venn diagram. You've got two circles there with an overlapping area. The criteria or the rules for the first circle is it has to be divisible by 5. So this rule here is divisible by 5. So if you see the circle right here, every number that I put inside this circle has to be divisible by 5. Now, this one over here, red, is divisible by 2. So anything inside here has to be divisible by 2. Now you're going to notice an area on the inside. This area right here is for those numbers that are divisible by both. Now, you're going to use your calculator, sorry, your brain, sorry, not your calculator. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, and you pause the recording, and when you're done, we will put all the answers in for you. Okay, here come your answers. See how well you did. 35 goes here. 90 goes in the middle. 765 goes here. 80 goes in the middle. 3,960 goes in the middle. 12 goes over here in the 2. 24 goes over here. 238 goes over here. 1,048 goes here. 1,028, sorry, 128 goes there. 56 goes here. 1,482 goes here. 1,519, that one goes outside. All right, you got assignment, page 8, questions 1 to 8. I would like you to get started on it, and you can check with me later whether as to it being homework or not. All right, that's the end of this one.